Hello and welcome. We will now begin the U.S. Copyright Office's latest public modernization webinar. During today's program, as attendees, you may submit questions using the Q&A panel accessed by clicking the Q&A icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We'll answer your questions after the presentation is complete. However, we may not answer all of the submitted questions during the webinar. So this session is being recorded, and if you choose to participate, any of your questions will be included in the recording as part of the official record. So with that, I'd like to introduce today's speakers. We have Rob Kasanik, Associate Registrar for Registration Policy and Practice, and TJ Willis, Program Manager, Registration Policy and Practice. And with that, I'd like to pass it on to TJ. TJ?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all and thank you for taking the time to join us as we talk a bit about our modernization efforts on the registration components of the enterprise copyright system. The Copyright Office has been working closely in partnership with the Office of the Chief Information Officer of the Library of Congress since 2017, when we began modernization. Before we take a closer look at some of the elements of the registration system that we've been working on, I'd like to take a moment to talk about the Enterprise Copyright System, or ECS, as a whole. At its heart, the Enterprise Copyright System is designed and built with its diverse set of users first and foremost. The system must not only support our public-facing systems, but it also must meet the needs of the Copyright Office staff who carry out the mission of the office. User-centered research and design work and the constant focus on building a flexible system that can adapt to the needs of all of these users are themes that we will continually highlight in the work we'll show you today. ECS will be a centralized enterprise IT system that integrates and improves all of the office's technology systems, which include registration, recordation, public record, and licensing IT systems. We're building the system to have a consistent look and feel across all applications. We're also leveraging a shared services model where components are built once and have the ability to be reused and customized to support multiple business workflows. By using modern tools and improved technology, we'll be better positioned to continuously improve our services while having the flexibility to adjust the ECS system to adapt to the ever-changing landscape of copyright and support for our many users. Before I talk about our development activities over the last few years, I'd like to clarify some terminology that we'll be using a lot today. When we refer to the external or applicant side of the registration system, this is what you access through copyright.gov and what the public uses to submit and work with registration applications. We'll also talk about the internal system, which is what we use in the office for examination workflows once an application package is received. While these two systems are in many ways intertwined in their functionality, they are two separate systems that require extensive development work. We started the registration development effort in 2017 with a 16-month-long large-scale outreach project where we gathered information from registration users that represented a cross-section of the creative industry. We asked them what they wanted to see in a reimagined registration system. We analyzed feedback given and came up with common themes along with pain points that users wanted to see addressed. We followed a similar, although smaller scale model for research in 2019, where we met with staff, supervisors, and managers to gather their thoughts on what was needed for a redesigned backend infrastructure to support examination duties. We also underwent business process reengineering, which studied several registration process workflows in order to improve quality and find more efficient ways to work. By summer of 2020, we had a lot of information on what users wanted to see in a new system. We began sketching out initial designs for portions of both the internal and external sides of the registration system, and it was time to get to work in actually building it. We started with the internal side of the system because it gave us time to get more research done to firm up our confidence in what would work best for applicants on the external side. Throughout the last part of 2020 and into the spring of 2021, we continued testing with various users of the system and made adjustments based on feedback. And just last month, in addition to continuing the ongoing work building the internal side of the system, we began work on the external side of the system with an additional team of developers. After our first development sprint that ended 3 weeks ago, we saw parts of the framework for the external system, and we saw it in live code for the first time. Now, admittedly, there wasn't much to see on what is essentially a blank canvas for our standard application workflows, but there was a lot of backend infrastructure work required in that 3-week sprint to get the framework up and running. And it was quite exciting to see even those basic screens in live code. We're working with a very talented team of user experience design experts who have led us in our efforts to approach design by putting the user first and foremost in all of our thinking. Those images on the right of the screen are some artifacts left over from the design process for our new registration system. We start with these low resolution drawings called wireframes and conduct research with users to find out if the initial designs that we've come up with meet actual user needs. We continue refining the designs through sessions with Copyright Office staff and experts, and may do additional testing with outside users depending on the complexity of a given issue. We don't just assume that we at the office are the experts and know what our users need. We work with actual users of the system and test our theories so that when we hand over instructions to our developers in how to build a component, we have a high degree of confidence that what we have created is the best option that benefits the most users. Now, even though we strive to meet the desires of every individual user, we've learned through testing that users often have unique needs or preferences that don't always match other users. That is to say that oftentimes someone will give us a particular piece of feedback, and then in the next testing session, another user will tell us the exact opposite of what the previous user said. So part of this process has also been to take feedback in the aggregate and find solutions that accommodate flexibility as much as possible, while also ensuring that we meet the needs of the majority of users. As work on the system progresses and components are built out and tested, even when we think we've gotten it right, when the system goes to a public release someday in the future, we have plans to continually solicit feedback and make improvements. So this process of testing, getting feedback, and making iterative changes will never stop, and we'll have the ability to adapt our system as needed. So let's now turn our focus to the main topic for today, which is the work we've been doing so far on the elements of the standard application form. On the left is a screenshot of the current ECO registration system landing page, and on the right is the newly designed ECS registration landing page. When you put them side by side like this, it's pretty easy to see where we are now with our system and where we're headed with a well-designed and modern interface in ECS. We've been conducting moderated user testing for this screen on the right. In the latest round of testing with a user who files many applications with the Copyright Office, the user remarked that on comparing the current ecosystem to the new ECS designs, and this is a direct quote, "It's like the difference between night and day." So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Robert Kasnick, Associate Registrar and Director of the Registration Policy and Practices Program, who will give us some more detail on the clickable prototype that we've been using in our research and testing activities.
Thank you, TJ, and good afternoon, everyone. TJ mentioned that our user research began in the fall of 2017, but I just wanted to point out that our research actually began long before that. The registration program and the Public Information Office have engaged with creators and applicants since the ecosystem was initially released in 2006. We have heard and recognized deficiencies in the ecosystem for almost 15 years now, and have long wanted to address those concerns. However, changes in ECHO have been extremely difficult, complex, and expensive, and we were always constrained by the limitations of the platform itself. It's important to understand that we're not upgrading the ecosystem. We are completely reimagining the registration system with a focus on the wide range of users of this system, both external users, including novice and experienced users across the broad spectrum of copyrightable authorship, as well as internal staff users as well. As the EPIC owner of the registration portion of the ECS system, from the start, my driving principles have been ensuring, first, the maximum flexibility for continuous change and improvement, and second, full commitment to a user-driven design approach. When we face design choices, we will always look to user testing to determine the optimal approach. And this will be an ongoing commitment even after our initial release of the new system. Our goal is to completely replace the current ecosystem with this reimagined ECS system by the end of 2024, but that will not be the end of the development process. As in the case of the third edition of the Compendium of Copyright Office Practices, in which we created a living electronic document to be continuously kept up to date, we fully intend the ECS system to be flexible so that it can be capable of changing to meet users' needs. Copyright's very existence is inextricably intertwined with the development of new technologies, and our goal is to ensure that the ECS system will be capable of adapting to technological change and to changes in the law and the office's regulations. Some have questioned why we began our external development work on the standard application process. The standard application in both paper applications and in Echo currently comes in 5 different forms, including a literary, a performing arts, a visual arts, a single serial, a sound recording, and a motion picture application. Cumulatively, approximately 70 to 75% of the 500,000 applications that the registration program receives annually are submitted on one of these 5 standard application forms. While the standard application is generally limited to the registration of individual works, the standard applications are used for all types of authorship, including new and emerging forms of authorship. Many of the fields and assistance to applicants that we are working on for the ECS standard application process can be leveraged into later development of particular group registration options. The 3 main differences between the standard application and group registration options are, first, the eligibility requirements for groups, for particular group options. Second, the submission of multiple deposits. And third, the title information for these multiple deposits. As you will see when I show you the deposit screen, the plans for populating the title field with the file name could be extremely beneficial in the group registration context. When we began user research with a contractor in 2017, we found that it was very difficult to locate users without experience with the registration system who would be willing to engage in user testing. Novice users are an extremely important component of our user-driven design approach and are responsible for a significant volume of the applications we receive annually. Through our design of the system, we hope to encourage more applicants to register the works they create. We want to ensure that we increase access to the registration system by providing a simple user interface and maximum user assistance to applicants at every step of the application process. We have long recognized that many applicants do not want to learn about copyright law or copyright office practices, but rather simply want to complete an application correctly and as quickly as possible. The optimal way to assist applicants is within the application itself. We are dedicated to using plain English to the greatest extent possible, providing explanations for legal terms in the application, providing support to applicants with options for answers, such as I don't know, or I'm not sure, incorporating as many web norms as possible that applicants are familiar with in other websites that they regularly use, options for getting started quickly for types of works previously registered, options to select previously used names and/or addresses from a drop-down list, and the use of a message center within the system to store communications and alert applicants that a message is available through notifications of the applicant's choosing. To overcome the problem that we previously encountered engaging novice applicants, we began work on portions of the standard application prototype by requesting the assistance of library services staff volunteers with no prior experience with the registration application process or copyright law. These staff members served as proxies for creators without registration experience and provided incredibly helpful input at the initial stages of the design process. By and large, their input provided significant validation of our efforts prior to beginning moderated user testing. Following that formative user testing with library staff, we engaged in moderated user testing with experienced applicants across the range of creative industries, including record companies, music publishers, book publishers, photographers, illustrators, and motion picture company applicants. The user experience design team of the Office of the Chief Information Officer conducted moderated user testing with the first version of the clickable prototype from January through March of 2021, and a second round of testing with a revised prototype and a new group of testers between April and June. These initial groups of testers were selected from responses received from invitations by me at presentations to the American Bar Association, the Copyright Society of the USA, individual stakeholder meetings conducted with a wide range of groups late last year and early this year, and emails received from people interested in being involved in testing. Our goal was to ensure that we included representation from experienced users across the wide array of copyrightable authorship submitted to the Literary Division, the Performing Arts Division, and the Visual Arts Division. The feedback from these sessions led to additional modifications and improvements throughout the application process. But it must be re-emphasized that this was not the end of user testing, but rather a very early form of user testing that was deemed essential for the beginning phase of the external registration development process. There will be more testing of prototypes and many more opportunities for testing developed portions of the ECS system prior to final release. And even after 2024, we intend to listen to ongoing user feedback to ensure that we continually improve the system to meet the needs of all users. The prototype that I'll be showing portions of today is an effort to increase the user-centric approach to development by limited moderated user testing before engaging in any actual development. The clickable prototypes were created and will continue to be created, will not only be used to test and adapt our approach to the design of the application processes, but also as a means of better communicating these application workflows to the development team. Even in the creation of these prototypes, we work closely with subject matter experts from each division within the registration program, user experience design experts within the Office of the Chief Information Officer, programmers and IT system design experts within the office, experts and product management experts. And again, when alternative options for any particular field or process arises, we note these options for further user testing for the final determination. What we're showing today is a work in progress and constantly evolving. There is a lot more work to be done in this complex system used by approximately 500,000 diverse creators each year. Our hope is that by making the system as accessible as possible to the widest range of users, we can foster increased registration throughout the copyright ecosystem. Next slide, please. The application process will begin with the type of work to be registered within the framework of the statutory categories of copyrightable authorship. As you can see, we intend to provide many different ways for applicants to get started on the right track. There are photographs used as visual cues in conjunction with the use of plain English, examples, descriptions, and links to more examples and descriptions. We also added a search function right at the top to enable entering a term that describes the work to be registered. And below that are more options for seeking help, either by clicking on the I'm not sure button or selecting one of the question links on the right side of the screen across from the I'm not sure button. The type of work selection is an important starting point for the application process because rather than having to choose a particular application form, as in the past, we intend to steer applicants toward the correct path based on their answers to questions. The application process will adapt to the type of work being registered. While we haven't started work on group options yet, we have begun to think about how we might offer group registration options that are available depending on the answers to certain questions. We also intend to incorporate ways to choose to bypass the selection process for recurring and experienced applicants by providing options to begin registering through application workflows that have previously been used within the user's account. For instance, if a user of the ECS account has regularly registered musical works, that user's process could begin with a question about whether the applicant would like to register a new musical work. If the applicant needs help selecting the proper category of authorship based on the question in the upper right-hand corner, next slide, please. They might see a page like this that would explain that the type of work is based on the predominant authorship created by the user of that work. Choosing any one of these options will lead to further help, descriptions, and/or examples. We always want to provide an opportunity for applicants to request more assistance, as in this example, by clicking on the I'm not sure button. If the applicant selected sound recording option, the sound recording option from this list, for example, the applicant would be taken to a page with more information. Next slide, please. On this landing page for a claim in a sound recording, we provide more information about what sound recordings are and what they may or may not include. This is an area we chose for user testing scenarios, in part because it has been a long-standing area of confusion for applicants, but also because it is an area in which user testing by a prior contractor completely failed in helping applicants navigate to the correct choice in user testing years ago. In most cases, sound recordings are derivative works that are the recorded performance of an underlying work, including either musical works, literary works, or dramatic works. If an applicant is also the author of the underlying work in the recording, a claim in the sound recording alone will not extend to that other work that may receive a broader scope of protection under the Copyright Act. Also, just because a work is recorded in audio form does not necessarily mean that the applicant is primarily interested in protecting that particular recording, but rather may be more concerned with protecting the underlying work that has been fixed in that recording. In other words, in the context of copyright law, applicants often confuse the form of fixation, a phonorecord as defined in the Copyright Act, with the authorship in the work that they care about protecting the most, such as the musical work. If the applicant is the author of both works, we want to assist the applicant in making the optimal choice for the proper scope of the registration claim. In this screen, we explain that sound recordings may involve multiple works and provide examples of such works, including recordings of musical works, audiobooks, podcasts, and recordings of dramatic works. We also provide the ability to select a link to other types of sound recordings for additional information. If the applicant selects the option for a sound recording of a musical work, we use a confirmation screen listing the 3 available options to make sure the applicant has selected the correct option for the situation. Either 1, registering the sound recording alone, 2, registering the sound recording and the musical work, or 3, the option of registering the musical work alone. We also provide links to more information on sound recordings and underlying works. And when we get to the multiple tiers of help that I will be showing you, we have identified this issue as an ideal candidate for a 3rd tier help tool or wizard to assist applicants with making the proper selection. In our current ecosystem, electronic deposits are not uploaded until after the payment of the fee through pay.gov. In early testing, moving the upload function up in the application process tested very well, as did using file names to initially serve as the title of the work. Similarly, in more recent moderated user testing, there was significant support for drag and drop upload capability in addition to browse and select options for uploading files. And many users like the idea of using file names as the editable title of the work. There are a number of reasons why encouraging applicants to adopt title-based file naming conventions would be beneficial to applicants and examiners alike. If applicants regularly name their files with basic title information, completing the application will be easier and faster for applicants. It will also help applicants ensure that they have uploaded the correct file as the deposit. Such consistency also helps examiners match the title to the file, an issue that becomes particularly important for examining group registration options in which multiple files may be uploaded. In several group registration applications, file naming conventions already exist, including group newspapers and group serials. Similarly, for group registration of photographs, the file name of each photograph assigned by the camera or the photographer may serve as the title for each photograph. Thus, for example, and merely as an illustrative example at this point in our development process, where an applicant could drag and drop 750 photographic files into the upload field and have those file name titles listed in the application automatically, the burden on both the applicant and the examiner would be significantly reduced. If further testing supports using the file name as the default editable title, we will move the title information under the upload field rather than what you're currently seeing displayed on the screen where it is above the upload field. I also want to focus your attention on 2 other features on this page that will appear on many screens that follow the title screen. At the very top of the page next to the registration category heading, there will be a reminder of the category of work that the applicant selected, the type or subcategory of work selected, the application status, and the type of application process being completed. As title information is added to the application, the title of the work will also appear at the top of the screen in the standard application and potentially in questions about the work following the title information screen. Below that is a horizontal navigation bar that will allow applicants to observe where they are in the process and also enable them to move between screens in the application process. There is also a save and return to the application button that will be in addition to the autosave features that we plan to include. Many applicants express concern that they might lose information added to the application if they were knocked off the application for some reason. While we intend the autosave feature to be robust, we added this feature to ensure that applicants are confident that the information they added will be saved before moving on or navigating to another screen. The first level of assistance that will appear next to application questions are the links to assist applicants with most fields on the screen. On this author screen, you will find 4 first-tier help questions, such as who created the work, when is the author an organization, what does this mean, next to the work made for hire question, and what is a co-author. Those are just examples of the kind of questions that can be added, and we've had feedback that has suggested that there would be benefit to many more questions. Clicking on any of those questions will engage a flyout help screen right on the page that will provide information relevant to the help link chosen. Next slide, please. If the information provided in the first tier help does not resolve the question, more in-depth information may be obtained by clicking on the blue box on the right-hand side of every screen. This is the second level or tier of help that will be available to applicants where needed. Next slide, please. Clicking on the second tier help box will bring up a more in-depth flyout with relevant information and links to additional resources, such as circulars or compendium sections. The example provided here relates to alternative name options, including the opportunity to determine whether a work is anonymous or pseudonymous. It is also important to note that certain questions will not be revealed unless certain answers are selected. For instance, questions about anonymous and pseudonymous authorship will not be asked unless the box indicating the applicant wishes to provide an alternate name for the author is selected. This simplifies the application process and prevents many common mistakes. Within the second tier help flyout, there will also be an option to select "I'm not sure" in certain cases. This will lead the applicant to third tier help. Here's an example of third tier help that will serve as a tool or wizard to lead applicants through a series of questions to help determine the answer to those questions. In this example, it is relatively simple to determine whether a work is anonymous or pseudonymous under the statutory definitions, simply by asking questions about what name, if any, appears on the work itself or the deposit that has been uploaded. If the author's legal name appears on the work deposited, the work is neither anonymous nor pseudonymous. Applicants routinely make mistakes in the ECHO application, often because they simply want to add a stage name or doing business as name to the application, but the work is not in fact pseudonymous under the statutory definition. The questions in this third tier of help can transform complex legal concepts into understandable factual questions. We expect such third tier wizards to assist applicants in other areas, such as work made for hire, publication status, transfer of ownership questions, derivative works, collective works, sound recording versus underlying works, and many other areas. Features like this can expand over time and provide additional assistance in areas that cause recurring confusion or problems. And the last slide I'll be covering on the external side of the system is this review application screen. In this screen, the applicant will be able to review all of the information that has been input during the application process and edit any field that needs to be changed or corrected. Obviously, an applicant can also use the navigation bar at the top and go back to a particular field to make changes, but editing capability is available directly from this page. We have also planned features that applicants, organizations, and law firms have requested for some time. In addition to the review the application facts entered, We intend to provide applicants with the ability to preview what the certificate will look like with the facts entered, as well as the ability to preview what the online public record will display if the work is registered. In addition, we intend to provide the ability to save this information as a PDF so that if an attorney or other person filling out the application wants to obtain approval or confirmation of the facts stated in the application, they may do so while the application is still in draft form. Although TJ will cover this in more detail shortly, I also wanted to emphasize that all communication between the applicant and examiner handling the claim will be done within the ECS system message center so that the full correspondence record will be available to applicants and the office staff and may ultimately become part of the online public record. We also intend to provide a status tracker within the system so that applicants can determine where their claim is within the application process. Again, the goal is to incorporate as many web norms as possible. So if you can track the status of a delivery, we want you to be able to track the status of your claim in copyright. With that, I will turn the presentation over to TJ to provide an update on the actual development work accomplished over the past year on the internal side of the ECS registration system. TJ, take it away.
Thanks, Rob. So we started building the internal side of the registration system a little over a year ago, and we've made quite a bit of progress in that short amount of time. Unlike what Rob just showed you, which is currently a limited clickable prototype, here you see a list of areas where we've built out at least a foundational capability for all of these different functions in a development environment. This means that this is fully tested code that has met all of our business and technical requirements and is ready to eventually be used in a live system. We're currently working with 2 development teams made up of project and product managers, user design and accessibility experts, Scrum team leaders, quality assurance testers, developers, business analysts, partners on our contracting teams, along with Copyright Office product management and registration subject matter experts. While we still have a long way to go to get all the end-to-end capabilities that we need for supporting the examination functions, we are well on our way. In the time we have left today, we'll highlight a couple of these components. But before we do that, let's take a look at what we currently use for our internal examination workflows. This is a screenshot of the internal system that we've used since 2007. Through the course of our research and outreach activities, I've found that a lot of our external users don't realize that the system we use internally for our examination work is essentially the same as what the public uses for submitting application packages. I've used this internal examination system myself since it went live, and I can tell you from personal experience that for all the concerns we hear from users on the applicant side of the system, it's even more challenging to use on our side. By modernizing our internal systems, we anticipate that this will help applicants by minimizing delays in our examination work. A leading cause of these inefficiencies today is due to outdated technology and interfaces similar to the one you see here. This screen is what we call a claims queue, which is essentially a list of cases that an examiner has assigned to them. The interface you see here is clunky. It wastes a lot of screen space with a bad layout of the information. It's not intuitive to use, and all of this makes it difficult to manage our caseloads. We receive around 500,000 application packages per year, so caseload management is a huge issue. And while we have found ways to adapt and make the current system work for us, we're very much looking forward to having modern tools and interfaces that will allow us to work more efficiently and comfortably. And while this is still a work in progress, here's a screenshot of that same claims queue in our reimagined system. We see a much cleaner interface here and user-controlled views and tools that are tailored to individual job functions. Many of the components that we're building for the internal side will be reused for the applicant side. For this claims queue, which is used to manage work for examination staff, our applicants and other external users will benefit because we can implement many of the same tools and functionality contained on this page into their side of the system. It will look different, but this will help in managing applications and other interactions with the office. There are a number of these common sets of tools baked into the screen. There's a table component here that has the ability to sort, filter, and order columns based on user inputs, which we anticipate both internal and external users will want to use. There's an option for selecting more than one case at a time and applying an action to it. In our current system, you must drill into each individual case, even if you need to do the same action over tens or even hundreds of cases. There are abilities to set up user-built views on this screen that you can access quickly via dropdown, which again might come in handy for both an internal user and an applicant on the external side who's managing a lot of cases that are in various stages of the registration application process. What we're seeing here is the information that an applicant has submitted on their application on the left, and in the flyout on the right, you'll see one of the ways that we'll be able to correspond with applicants while we see the details of that case. Copyright registration is complex by nature, and while we're striving to build help for users at every step in the application process, there will always be issues that will require correspondence between the office and applicants. In the current Siebel system, we've long had issues surrounding communications and correspondence since this system relies primarily on emails. If applicants don't follow instructions on how to reply to these emails, and certain information doesn't get picked up in the body of that email, the email may not connect correctly to a case in the Siebel system, which results in delays until someone goes through and manually connects the email. Sometimes spam filters will block Copyright Office correspondence to applicants, and applicants won't know that we've written to them. In order to address this in the new system, we're creating a new way to correspond with the office. With the ECS Message Center, substantive emails with outside users becomes a thing of the past. When an applicant sets up their account, they will choose different options for how they would like to be notified when the office needs to correspond with them. They might want to be notified by text, robocall, a non-substantive email, or a combination of any or all of those. When the office begins correspondence, a notification is sent to the applicant, and they will then log into the system to interact with the office in a secure environment. We will also be able to set up automated status and reminder notifications. So one example of this might be when we correspond with an applicant, and the system reminds them at certain intervals that they need to respond to our message within a certain time period. By utilizing a message center, the applicant will also be able to have, in one place, a view of all of their correspondence with the office across all cases submitted. While applicants will still need to reply in a timely manner in order to keep the process moving, the new message center will streamline interactions and help to resolve issues in a more efficient manner, and without all the problems associated with substantive emails sent today in the current system. This is an alternate view for a longer form correspondence that examiners will use to compose and work with correspondence. I just thought I'd quickly show this as an example of how, wherever possible, we're giving users a choice of how they wish to work and interact with the system. Some of our examination staff will prefer to correspond with applicants by exclusively using the message center view that I showed in the previous screen, and some examination staff will prefer to work exclusively in this long form view that you see here. Some will prefer to use a combination of the two depending on the work at hand. These are specific features and options that staff have asked for, and wherever possible, we're giving the same flexibilities to our external users and giving them tools that adapt to the way that they wish to work. Since we're running low on time, the last component I'd like to show you is previews on how we're working to improve the capabilities for applicants to better submit electronic deposits and ways for the office to work with them once they're received here. Earlier, Rob showed us how an applicant will use drag and drop functionality to upload their files. On our side, we need to examine those files, and what you're seeing here is the foundation for our new deposit renderer. Many of the files that we receive are large, and in the current system, they're clunky to work with. It can be hard to navigate through multiple files associated with one application, and it often takes a long time to open and view each of these files. For this component, which we're calling Deposit Renderer, we're exploring options for ways to make the content easier to navigate and examine efficiently. We started this component by building the foundational capability that focuses solely on working with PDF files. In the coming months, we'll add to this capability and adjust the design in order to support all of the other file types needed to view and examine examination copies. So this would include files such as JPEGs, motion picture files, MP3s, and many more that are currently found on our acceptable file types list on copyright.gov. And of course, we'll be building this component in a flexible way that will allow us to add future types of files that we don't even know about yet. I think this is a good stopping point so that we can leave some time for Q&A. So Rob, unless you have anything to add, I'd like to turn things back over to Steve.
No, let's go ahead and turn it over to Steve for questions.
Great, and thank you very much. That was great to hear. Before we start the Q&A, we're just asking you all to take part in a quick poll. We just want to know what future webinar topics you may be interested in. So you can please click all that apply on your screen, and we'll consider that as we plan our future webinars. So if you take a moment for that, and just to remind you, you can submit questions into the Q&A by accessing the Q&A panel on the bottom of your Zoom screen. And let us end and get to the questions. Thank you very much, everyone. And so with that, I'd like to start with the first question. The first question from the audience is about APIs. Are there plans to build into the registration system APIs so that creators can register their work seamlessly at the point of creation in their software package? For instance, a photographer or illustrator could register via API through Adobe Creative Cloud applications or the like.
Yes, thanks for that question. And we absolutely do intend to build APIs that would function in two different ways. First, to answer the question asked, we do want to create APIs that will allow for third parties to create interfaces with our application system or our ECS system that will enable bypassing these screens with built-in technical requirements within those APIs, so that, for instance, as the question suggests, that there may be a way to directly submit applications from a particular software program or other vehicle. We'd also want to make sure that we leverage the technological expertise of the non-government community by allowing third parties to be able to create new ways to submit these applications, or perhaps even create work-specific types of interfaces that are particularly helpful for particular types of creators, as in the case of photographers, or this could be true of many different categories of authorship. So we absolutely do intend to build that functionality. When that functionality will be added to the system is less clear at this point in time. We have a lot of work to do. Obviously, we can't build connections into the system until we have the complete system developed. So this may be part of continuous development after 2024, but we are working as hard as we can to make as much progress as we can by 2024. Excuse me. I also just want to mention that there is another way that APIs could work, and that's for extracting information from the office's public records. And we also do hope to be able to enable APIs so that there is that ability to fashion methods of extracting, third-party methods of extracting, rather than relying simply on the public record system alone, but to interface with that public record system in order to extract data or data sets from that system. So thank you for the question.
Great. And speaking about 2024, we had one question where someone wanted whether anything would change on the website before January 2024.
There may be some minor changes to the website that have to the ecosystem that have nothing to do with this modernization process, but do have to do with an upgrade of the Siebel system that is required for various reasons. That is still in testing, that upgrade, and we expect it to be very minor changes to what anyone sees on the screen, and will not be adding new functionality to that system. It's simply a technical upgrade to have the most recent version of the Siebel system in place to be able to preserve that through the rest of our development work. And I should add, although we do intend to flip the switch from the external interface of the ecosystem to the new interface for the ECS system towards the end of 2024, that we will still need to keep the internal Siebel system functioning for some time after that, so that we can resolve any lingering claims that were submitted through the ecosystem. So that will be for internal use by examiners. And in addition, it's until we can transfer all of the data from that system into the new electronic system, we will have to keep that working. So there will be a period where we will be maintaining both systems, but the public and applicants will only be seeing one system at a time. And part of the reason for that, you might note that that is somewhat different from the way the recordation modernization process is working, where there is currently a pilot for the new electronic system in recordation. But that is a significant difference from the registration modernization effort, in part because the recordation system is moving from a fully paper-based system to its first electronic system. And so it's possible to have those two, that paper-based system and the electronic system, working at the same time. In fact, that's what we've been doing in registration since 2006 or 7, is that we still maintain a paper-based system. We have the electronic ecosystem, and we also have the hybrid system, where we have electronic applications that are submitted with physical deposits. It would just be a bridge too far to try to add on top of our current Echo electronic system an additional electronic system. And I think not only would it cause confusion for applicants, but it would be very difficult for training purpose for examiners as well. So we will be limiting, on the registration side, we will be doing testing prior to the final user testing prior to the final release, but it will not be the equivalent of what is going on in the recordation pilot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have received several questions about using templates in the new system. So we have one question asking if we could use, if the using an existing template option would be available, if there'll be templates for the standard application, which one of our attendees found very useful. And also we had questions about creating templates. So if you could address templates in the new system, that'd be great.
Thanks. Yeah, we've heard a lot about templates, and know that that's something that has been very helpful to applicants. Although I think the whole concept of templates has been largely a feature of the ecosystem, and some of the constraints and inabilities to do certain functions within that system And so templates were the best answer for regular users to update. We've also noted over the years that there have been significant problems with templates where they have been misused or not adequately managed by applicants. And so we often receive mistakes because of the use of templates. We haven't ruled out the use of templates, but I think it's important to understand that we, as I said, we're not upgrading the ecosystem. We are re-envisioning this, and with a number of the features that I mentioned that we are intending to include within the ECS system, the need for templates seems to be significantly reduced. So, for example, if, as I mentioned, a frequent applicant registered the same types of works or certain multiple a subset of varieties of works on a regular basis, they could be asked a question at the beginning of whether they want to register any of those categories or the most frequent category that was typically registered, and put them into that without going through those introductory screens. Once in that application, as I mentioned, the upload feature as being able to default to the title information once those uploads are entered, are uploaded, that could very quickly fill out and automatically fill out the title information for the work or works that have been uploaded. And the drop-down list that will function in much the same way that other websites function, where it saves a list of frequently used addresses or other information from a drop-down that you can select and quickly fill out all the fields in the contact information or the rights and permission information or other areas. So there would be very few, and that could be the author information, the claimant information could also be from that drop-down list. There would be very few areas within the application that would require actual keying in of information for regular users. So again, while we haven't ruled out the use of templates, I think that it is important to start thinking outside of the way users have used the ecosystem and the features that will be available in the ECS system that are more like the vast majority of applications and websites that users are regularly used to. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, and I think we have time for one short question.
Maybe I can
yeah, go ahead.
quickly look, just because there were a number of questions that were added as this goes on. I'm just trying to scan through them, and a lot came in while I was answering those questions. So we're definitely not going to be able to answer those. But one issue that has come up before is, are we going to be able to use a different financial account management system to store payment credit information similar to USPTO Gov's Financial Account Manager? And we have been in close contact with the USPTO and have been communicating with them and consulting with them on various aspects of the modernization process and specific issues that have come up. So that's something that we certainly will talk about. We have not yet gotten to the payment functionality, at least within the registration system. So we will keep an eye on that. And I'm sorry that there are a number of other questions that were asked, but I see we have run out of time. So we will find a vehicle to provide additional information outside of the context of this webinar, but greatly appreciate all the questions that were asked, and we'll do our best to make answers available.
Yes, and with that, I'd like to conclude today's webinar. So thank you everyone who joined us today. When you do sign out of the session, we encourage you to take part in a brief survey regarding your experience. We use this to improve our webinar program, and there's a questions related to today's topic. So your feedback is greatly appreciated and helps make our products better. So thank you again, everyone, for your participation today, and we look forward to seeing you again at future webinars. Thank you all very much.